The red carpet-trapped lights were blinding, and the crowd outside the hotel shimmered like stars fallen from the sky. People screamed Keanu's name with an almost desperate love. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward, begging for a quote. Everyone wanted a piece of him. But that night, something didn't feel right. Keanu Reeves stood still for a moment outside the premiere of a new film. He had agreed to promote for charity. He wasn't the lead actor. He wasn't even in the cast. He was just showing up to support an organization that helped kids in war-torn countries. But that didn't matter to the public. They saw the black suit, the calm face, the deep eyes, and they shouted for him. Not knowing that inside, his soul felt shaken. He looked to his right, where his publicist was supposed to be. But she was gone. In her place stood a woman he hadn't seen in a long time, Kim Kardashian. She smiled that sweet, camera-ready smile. Her hand was already around his arm. She leaned close and whispered, "Just play along, Keanu. It's already in motion." He didn't understand, but the flashes intensified. He took a half step back. "What's going on?" he asked in a low voice. Kim didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hand and waved to the cameras. "Just smile," she said through her teeth. "Tonight's all about you." Keanu wanted to pull away. He had always stayed out of celebrity games. He had turned down deals, fame traps, and fake stories all of his life. So why now? Why was he standing here beside someone who lived for headlines? And then it hit him. A reporter near the edge of the red carpet shouted, "Keanu, is it true you're dating Kim Kardashian?" The crowd erupted. More cameras went off. People started chanting their names together, like it was already real. He turned to Kim. Her smile didn't break, but behind her eyes, he saw something: panic, desperation, guilt. "What did you do, Kim?" he asked, still whispering. "You'll thank me later," she said quietly, though her voice was shaking. "Just trust me." But he didn't. Something felt wrong. He could sense it, like a storm brewing behind a wall. And just then, someone from her team stepped forward and placed a hand on his back, guiding him toward the ballroom inside. Keanu took a breath. He had two choices: walk away and cause a scene, or go inside and figure out what was really going on. He chose the second. Inside, the air was cold and heavy. Chandeliers sparkled above expensive suits and designer dresses. Laughter echoed, but none of it felt real. People watched him like he was a rare animal, and Kim never left his side. At one point, a young woman walked up to him, shaking. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did for my brother," she said. "He had cancer, and you visited him without any cameras. He talked about it every day until he passed. You gave him hope." Keanu's throat tightened. "What was his name?" he asked gently. "Marcus." He nodded slowly. "Marcus was a fighter." The woman cried and hugged him, and in that moment, everything faded: the cameras, the rumors, even Kim's strange silence. But it didn't last. Half an hour later, a massive screen lit up behind the main stage. It showed a video. First, it was just photos: him and Kim walking together that evening, holding hands for a moment, then clips of her entering his house days earlier, though he hadn't even known she was being followed. And then a headline appeared on the screen in bold letters: Kim Kardashian and Keanu Reeves, Hollywood's newest power couple. The room gasped. He turned to Kim, stunned. "This is what you meant by already in motion. You don't get it," she said quietly. "This is the only way I can save my brand. I'm being pushed out. The networks, the sponsors, they want a new story. And you're the story they believe in." Keanu looked at her. "You used me." Kim's eyes welled up. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know what else to do. They threatened to destroy everything. All I built, my family." He stepped back, breath shallow. The room had gone silent, all eyes on him. But then a deeper silence came inside his own heart. A voice, soft and steady, told him not to react in anger, not to shame her, not to fight in public. He turned to the microphone at the front of the room. People expected a denial, or maybe a confirmation. Instead, Keanu said, "There's something all of you should know." The room waited, breath held. "I came here tonight to support children suffering from war. I didn't come to be part of a headline. I didn't come to sell an illusion. I've never cared about fame. I care about people." He paused. "And sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes they panic. Sometimes they use others to escape their own storms." His eyes met Kim's. She was shaking, her face pale. "But I won't fight you, Kim. I won't expose you. I only hope you remember that truth matters more than clicks, and healing matters more than headlines." He walked off the stage, not with anger, not with pride, but with quiet strength. Outside, the crowd buzzed, more cameras, more questions. But Keanu didn't stop. He got into the car waiting for him, closed the door, and sat in silence. His phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words: "They know." He stared at the screen. Then his phone buzzed again. This time, a video played. It showed him sitting in his house alone. But somehow, the video had sound, his voice, his private thoughts, recorded without his knowledge. Keanu Reeves had just realized something far more dangerous than a publicity stunt was happening. He had been set up. And someone out there wanted to destroy him. But he didn't know why. Yet. Behind the screen, city outside Keanu's car window blurred into streaks of neon and shadows. He didn't speak. He didn't blink much. He just held the phone, staring at the video that had been sent to him. His own voice played in soft echoes. Words he'd never said in public. Private thoughts recorded from his home without his consent. The driver asked if he was okay, but Keanu only nodded. He had faced loss. He had faced loneliness. But this felt different. This felt like betrayal wrapped in silence. A ghost with a camera and no face. He opened the message again. Just 2 words: "They." No doubt. Who were they? What did they know? And how did they get inside his home? His house was protected. He had no smart devices, no assistants, no security cameras connected to the cloud. He lived simply, quietly. So how did someone record him? He tapped a number on his phone. The line rang once, twice. "This is Ethan," a deep voice answered. Keanu didn't waste time. "I need you to sweep my house, tonight." "What happened?" "Someone's been watching me." Silence. "I'll be there in an hour," Ethan said. "Don't touch anything." Keanu ended the call and closed his eyes. He leaned back against the seat and tried to slow his breathing. The night felt colder now, and not because of the air. When he got home, he didn't go inside. He waited in the car. He stared at his own front door, wondering if the walls had betrayed him, or if someone he trusted had opened the door for a stranger. Ethan arrived, a tall man with gray at his temples and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He used to work in intelligence before he started his own private security firm. But for Keanu, he was more than an expert. He was a friend, someone who knew when not to ask too many questions. They entered the house quietly. The lights stayed off. Ethan moved through the rooms like a shadow. He carried a small device that beeped softly. As he waved it near objects. 30 minutes later, he found it. A tiny bug hidden in the back of a wooden picture frame in Keanu's study. Smaller than a coin, almost invisible. It had a transmitter inside. "This isn't cheap," Ethan said. "Whoever planted this knew what they were doing. Could it have come from a guest?" Ethan nodded. "But you'd need access, and time or distraction." Keanu sat down. "Kim came here last week. She said it was about a charity idea. We had coffee in the kitchen. Then she went to the bathroom." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Did she go anywhere else?" Keanu thought back. "She stepped into the study. She said she liked the painting." Ethan sighed. That might have been enough, but something didn't add up. If Kim had planted the bug, why would she seem so scared tonight? She looked like she was being pushed, like someone had forced her into that room, into that plan. What if she's not behind this? Keanu said aloud. Ethan looked at him. "Then someone's using her, too." The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Keanu and Kim, Hollywood's newest love story. Exclusive footage inside Keanu's mansion. Kim Kardashian and Keanu Reeves caught whispering secrets. The video had leaked, but not the part he received. This one was edited, softened, polished. It showed only enough to create gossip, not enough to raise alarms. But Keanu knew better. The version he received last night was raw, unfiltered. It had picked up a recording of him talking about his doubts regarding Hollywood contracts. How he'd been quietly funding legal cases for wrongfully imprisoned workers in other countries. How he suspected that some powerful groups were using charity fronts to launder money. None of that was supposed to be public. And now, someone had it. He called Ethan again. "We need to trace the video." "Already tried." The link was masked, bounced through 6 servers. "Whoever sent it knows what they're doing." Keanu leaned back. "Then we go to the source." Kim. Keanu nodded. "It's time to talk. In person." When he called Kim, she didn't answer. The second time, her assistant picked up, panicked. "She's not here," the woman said. "She hasn't been seen since last night." Keanu froze. "What do you mean?" "After the event, she got into a different car. Not hers. No one knows." "Who arranged it?" "We thought she was with you." "No," Keanu said quietly. "She wasn't." He hung up. Something deeper was happening. He turned to Ethan again. "She's missing." Ethan narrowed his eyes. Then this just got bigger. Later that day, Keanu met with an old journalist friend, Lena. She used to cover corruption in Hollywood, but left the industry after receiving threats. Now she lived quietly, far from the spotlight, but she owed Keanu. Years ago, he had helped her sister get out of a violent relationship and never told a soul. "You're being hunted," Lena said after watching the full, unedited video. "This isn't about gossip or romance. This is about silence." "Silence? They're trying to scare you into disappearing. Because if you speak, if you testify, something huge falls apart." Keanu's mind raced. "Testify for what?" Lena leaned closer. "Do you remember that charity gala you spoke at 3 months ago?" "Yes. I donated all proceeds to rebuild schools in Libya. Those schools were never built, not one. But on paper, they were, and the money gone." Keanu stared at her, silent. "You were the face. They used your name, your kindness, your credibility, and when you found out something was wrong, they knew it was only a matter of time before you talked." He shook his head slowly. "I thought I was helping. You were. That's why they need to bury you now, quietly or publicly." "What does Kim have to do with this?" Lena hesitated. "Her company was on the list of sponsors. It's possible she got a cut, or she was tricked to. She's missing," he said quietly. "And I'm starting to think she was trying to warn me." Lena nodded. "Then you need to find her, fast, before they use her as the next headline." Keanu stood up. The calm in his body had returned, but this time, it was sharp, steady, like a man walking through fire who knew he would not burn. He called Ethan again. "We're not waiting anymore," Keanu said. "We trace that car, we find Kim, and we find out who's behind this." "What if they're watching you?" Ethan asked. "Then let them watch. But they'll see something they didn't plan for." "What's that?" Keanu's voice was quiet. "I don't play by their rules." That night, while Ethan worked on tracking the mystery vehicle, Keanu sat in his study again. He looked around the room that once brought him peace. Now every object felt like a potential spy. Every frame a lie, every light a watcher. His phone rang again. Another unknown number. He answered. A distorted voice spoke. "Stop asking questions, or she disappears." The line went dead. Keanu didn't move. He now knew 2 things. First, Kim was alive. Second, someone believed he could still be scared. They were wrong. The truth buried beneath the fammoth night had fallen hard. But Keanu didn't rest. In a quiet room dimly lit by a single lamp, he sat across from Ethan. They had been at it for hours, studying every traffic camera, every satellite map, and every angle that could tell them where Kim had gone after the event. They didn't trust the cloud. They didn't trust the phones. Everything was done offline now, just like the old ways. Keanu's single quotes S face looked calm, but his eyes were sharp, focused. He wasn't worried about headlines anymore. He was worried about a woman who, despite all her mistakes, had tried to tell him something. He remembered the way her voice trembled when she said, "Just play along." He remembered her eyes like someone who had made a deal with the devil, but was trying to break free. "We got something," Ethan said finally. He pulled up a blurry video from a private parking lot. No news channels had this footage. It showed Kim being escorted by 2 men in black suits into a dark sedan. She didn't fight, but her hands were clenched, her face was pale, and the license plate Fake. Ethan zoomed in. But look here, he pointed. She dropped something as she got in. It was quick, just a flick of the wrist, but visible. Pause it, Keanu said. Ethan paused the footage. Can we enhance that corner? Ethan worked. Fast, and soon a clearer image appeared. It was a small item, white, rectangular. That's a hotel keycard, Keanu said. The hotel was a few blocks away from the venue. Old, luxurious, quiet. Not the kind of place with security guards at every door, but classy enough to attract the wealthy who wanted silence. Keanu and Ethan arrived late, dressed like tourists. Keanu wore a baseball cap low over his eyes, and Ethan carried a small camera in his jacket. They didn't go to the front desk. They walked straight to the elevator and stopped at the floor number that matched the card Kim had dropped, 42. The hallway was empty. Elegant lamps lit the walls. Deep carpets muffled their footsteps. Room for one. Keanu knocked twice. No answer. He placed his ear to the door. Nothing. Then, gently, he tried the handle. Unlocked. They stepped in. The room was clean, untouched, but something felt off. The curtains were closed. A half-empty glass of water sat on the table, and near the bed, a small notebook with a broken pen lay open. Ethan scanned the space. She was here, but not long ago. Keanu walked to the notebook. Something had been written, then quickly scratched out, but the pressure marks were still there. He picked up the notepad, turned to the next blank page, and gently shaded it with the side of a pencil from his coat. Letters started to appear. They lied to me. I was told he knew. I tried to warn him. I heard them say something about G37. If anything happens to me, tell him to look beneath. Beneath what? G37, Ethan asked. Sounds like a code. A room number, a flight, or a file, Keanu murmured. He took a photo of the note, pocketed the pad, and turned to leave. But before he reached the door, he noticed a faint blinking light beneath the bed. Ethan spotted it too. They dropped to their knees and pulled out a black box no bigger than a cigarette pack. A tracker. They knew she was here, Ethan said. Keanu single quotes S. Jaw tightened. And they're coming. They exited quickly and slipped down the stairwell. Moments later, 3 men in suits walked out of the elevator and entered room 421. Keanu watched through a crack in the stairwell door. They're not cops, Ethan whispered. They're private, expensive. Someone powerful is behind this. Keanu's phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't a video or a threat. It was an address. Nothing else. Just a location pin, deep inside an abandoned part of the city, where old factories sat empty like forgotten bones. He looked at Ethan. It's a trap, Ethan said. Keanu nodded. But it might also be where she is. We're going in blind. Keanu looked down at his hands, steady, calm, then up again. Then we go with our eyes open. The warehouse was cold. Metal groaned in the wind. The walls were covered in rust and graffiti. Old paint peeled off like skin from a wound. They parked 2 blocks away and walked in through the side, staying low, hidden in shadows. Keanu remembered these places from his youth, places where dreams were abandoned, and silence screamed louder than noise. Inside, footsteps echoed. They weren't alone. Ethan motioned left. 2 guards, heavily armed. One had a headset. They weren't amateurs. Keanu signaled to hold back. They waited, then slipped past through a broken panel near the wall, room by room. They moved until they reached a metal door. From the other side, they heard a voice. Kim single quotes S. Double quotes. I told you. I didn't tell him anything. He doesn't even know who's behind it. Another voice replied, deep, angry. He knows more than you think. And now he's hunting. If you had done your job, this wouldn't be happening. You promised me no one would get hurt. A pause. Plans. Change. Keanu moved. Quickly. He kicked open the door and entered with his hands raised. Calm but firm. Let her go, he said. The man behind the table turned. Not a bodyguard. Not an actor. A billionaire. Gregory Hayes, head of G37 Investments. A name that meant power, silence, control. Well, Gregory said, rising slowly. I was wondering when you'd come. You bugged my house, used Kim, tried to break my name. Gregory smiled like a man used to winning. You were a problem. The moment you started asking where the money really went, We used you because people trust you. But you were never supposed to look deeper. Keanu stepped forward. And Kim? Gregory looked at her, sitting in the chair, hands tied but unhurt. She panicked. Tried to play both sides. That never ends well. Let her go, Keanu said again. Gregory chuckled. And what? You think you'll walk out of here, you think? Your name protects you. No, Keanu said quietly. But truth does. Gregory pulled a gun from under the table and aimed. Ethan was faster. In one swift move. He tackled the lights. Darkness exploded. Chaos. Shouting. Movement. When the lights came back, Keanu had pulled Kim out of her chair. Ethan had disarmed one guard. The other ran. Gregory lay on the floor, blood from a cut on his head, stunned but alive. You'll never prove anything, he hissed. Keanu looked down at him. You already did, he said, holding up a small recorder that had been running since he entered the room. An hour later, Kim sat on the steps outside the warehouse, wrapped in a blanket. She looked tired, broken. I didn't know it would go this far, she whispered. They said it was just publicity, a small lie, to buy time. Keanu sat beside her. Ali's never small when it costs someone's life. Kim nodded, eyes glassy. Thank you for coming. You tried to warn me, even if it was late. Will you tell the world what happened? Keanu looked out into the night. I don't need to. Truth doesn't need shouting. It just needs to be seen. And somewhere, in the distance, the first hint of morning light touched the sky. The quiet storm sun rose slow over the city, touching rooftops with gold. But inside Keanu's heart, there was no warmth, not yet. He stood in front of the mirror in his modest home, the same place where the first betrayal had happened. The bug in the frame, the hidden eyes, the fake friendship. But now he knew. Now he had names, faces, and something more powerful than anger. He had the truth. Ethan had already gone back to his firm to secure the audio recording of Gregory Hayes' confession. Everything Gregory said in that warehouse, the bribes, the setup, the exploitation of charities was captured, word for word. It was enough to bring down a whole network of corruption. But that wasn't the part that kept Keanu awake. It was Kim. He remembered her voice, trembling. As she said, I thought it was just publicity. He believed her. She didn't want to hurt anyone, but she had. And now she had to live with it. Keanu knew what that kind of guilt felt like. Years ago, he had trusted someone blindly, signed a project he believed was for good. It ended with hundreds of workers being underpaid, mistreated, and hidden behind contracts. He had spent years making it right. Now, history had come full circle. But this time, he would not clean up in silence. This time, the world needed to see. At noon, Lena visited his home. The same fearless journalist who once exposed an entire studio for stealing from indie creators, and who had since vanished into the shadows to protect herself. But today, she was back in the light. Keanu handed her the recorder. She listened, eyes wide. You understand what this means, she whispered when the tape ended. Yes, Keanu said. If we release this, half of Hollywood will turn on you. Gregory has ties to everyone from streaming giants to fashion houses. Keanu nodded. They already tried to bury me. Now they'll know why they failed. Lena looked at him. You're sure you want to go public? Keanu didn't blink. Only if you tell the full story. Don't protect me. Don't make me a hero. Tell them I didn't see it coming. Tell them I was blind. And tell them I decided to do something, even if it cost everything. Lena smiled softly. That's the part people will remember. 2 days later, the article went live. The setup of Keanu Reeves, how Hollywood used him to cover a billion-dollar fraud. It was more than a headline. It was a storm. Inside were photos, audio, transcripts, bank records, everything Lena and her team could verify. They didn't use anonymous sources. They used facts. They showed how money meant for disaster relief was rerouted into fake development projects. How celebrities unknowingly lent their faces to protect illegal movements. How G37 investments had been at the center of it all. And in the middle of the storm stood one named Keanu Reeves, not as a victim, not as a savior, but as a man who chose to speak. The internet exploded. Some fans defended him, some doubted, some screamed for justice, others called it a media trick. But the truth was out. It couldn't be undone. And then something unexpected happened. One by one, more voices rose. A retired cameraman posted a video of how he was asked to plant a photo showing Keanu in a false romantic moment with another actress. Years ago, a former assistant at a talent agency confessed she was told to delete files that could connect G37 to shady contracts, but she had secretly saved a backup. Even an actor who once criticized Keanu came forward, saying, "I judged him without knowing the pressure he was under. Now I know better." The quiet storm was spreading. Truth has no armor, no sword. It moves slow, soft, like wind over water. But once it begins, nothing can stop it. Meanwhile, in a mansion on the outskirts of the city, Gregory Hayes watched it all unfold, his face red with fury, papers scattered across his desk, lawyers calling, banks freezing his assets. But one thing bothered him more than the story. It was the silence from Keanu. No interviews, no press tours, no statements. Why isn't he defending himself? Gregory shouted. Because he didn't have to. Truth speaks. In silence. Kim sat alone on her balcony, the sun setting behind her. The world had turned its eyes on her, too. Some blamed her, others pitied her. The media called her the fallen queen of image, but she didn't care about titles anymore. Her phone rang. Keanu. She answered. He didn't ask how she was. He just said, "You helped, whether you meant to or not." Kim whispered, "They're going to destroy me, maybe." Keanu replied, "But maybe this is your chance to be something more." She wiped her eyes. "They said no one would believe me if I told the truth, that I'd lose everything. And now that you've lost it." Kim exhaled, a long breath. "I feel like I can breathe again." Keanu said nothing. She understood that silence. It was the kind that meant peace. A week passed. Then more arrests followed. Gregory Hayes disappeared before the FBI arrived. Vanished. No trace. But the case went on. Investors were questioned. Companies were exposed. And slowly, painfully, people began to realize how much money had been hidden, stolen, erased from the hands of those who needed it most. Keanu walked through a street in Los Angeles. No cameras following. No fans asking for autographs, just a man in a hoodie with his hands in his pockets, watching as life went on. At a corner, he passed a small food stall. The owner, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked up and said, "You're him, aren't you?" Keanu paused. "I guess I am." She nodded, then handed him a sandwich. On the house, he looked at her. "I didn't do much. You told the truth," she said. "That's enough." Later that night, as he sat alone at a cafe, Lena texted him. "Check the news." He opened it. An old clip of him speaking at a charity had gone viral. It was a forgotten speech, one he barely remembered giving. In it, he said, "People are not broken. They are buried, under fear, under lies, under pressure to pretend. But if we choose to dig, we find something unbreakable." Keanu stared at the screen, then closed his phone. He didn't need headlines. He didn't need applause. He just needed peace. And now, at last, it was close. The final test. Streets of Los Angeles carried a strange kind of quiet that week, like the city itself was holding its breath. Newspapers still ran pieces about the charity scandal, and talk shows whispered about Keanu's bravery. Some called him a hero. Others said he got lucky. But Keanu wasn't reading the headlines anymore. He was walking again, through alleys and old neighborhoods, places where no cameras followed. He visited shelters, schools, and a halfway house for boys who had no families. He didn't announce his presence. He didn't make speeches. He just showed up, listened, and helped. Yet something deep in his chest hadn't settled. Because Gregory Hayes was still missing. Every day, the news said the same thing. No trace. No movement, no activity on bank accounts or phones. It was like Gregory had vanished into thin air. But Keanu knew better. Men like Gregory didn't vanish. They waited. They planned. And they came back when no one expected. One night, as rain fell in slow sheets over the city, Ethan came to Keanu's home with a file. "We got a hit," he said, pulling out a folder. Keanu opened it. Inside were surveillance photos taken by a private contact overseas. Images of a man boarding a private jet in Istanbul under a false name. It was Gregory Hayes. Where's he going? Keanu asked. Malta. He owns property there, unlisted, under shell companies. We only found it because one of his former assistants flipped. Keanu studied the images. Gregory was alive. And he was moving. Ethan sat down. We could send this to the authorities. Let them handle it. Keanu shook his head slowly. He'll vanish again before they land. So what are you saying? I'm saying we finish what we started. Ethan sighed. You're not a spy, Keanu. I don't need to be, he replied. I just need to look him in the eye. They left 2 days later. No fanfare. No news. Not even Lena knew. Keanu flew on a private plane owned by a trusted contact, a retired pilot who owed him a favor from years ago, when Keanu funded his daughter's surgery in secret. Favors like that don't disappear. They stay quiet, and they show up when it matters. When they landed in Malta, the air was dry and thick with salt. Narrow streets twisted between sandstone buildings, and the ocean shimmered at the edge of every view. But beauty couldn't hide danger. They were walking into a cornered man's fortress. Gregory's villa stood high above the sea, behind stone walls and guarded gates. Cameras watched every angle. But Ethan had studied the blueprints, and Keanu remembered something Ethan once said. Every wall has a shadow. Find it. They waited for night. And then they moved, climbing over a side wall and sneaking through an overgrown garden. They found a door left slightly open, maybe by mistake, maybe not. Inside, the villa was silent. Old marble floors, high ceilings, expensive art on every wall. No footsteps. No alarms. Keanu walked first, Ethan behind him. They followed the flicker of candlelight down a hallway, and there, inside a library filled with old books and silence, sat Gregory Hayes. Alone. No guards, no guns. Just him, sipping a drink like he had been expecting them. You took your time, Gregory said, smiling. Keanu didn't smile back. You ran. No, Gregory said calmly. I relocated. I had to. You ruined everything. You did that yourself. Gregory leaned forward. You really think this ends with a few headlines? The world doesn't change because of truth. It changes when power says so. And you, he pointed at Keanu, eyes narrowing. You are a symbol. That's what makes you dangerous. Not the tape, not the article. You. Keanu stepped forward slowly. You lied to the world. You took from the poor. You used good people as pawns. And they let me, Gregory replied. You want to know the real secret? People don't care. Not for long. They get bored. They move on. But men like me, I wait. I build again. Keanu said nothing. Then Ethan spoke. We're not here to talk. Gregory smiled again, almost amused. You think you'll drag me back? I'm not stupid. I've already moved my assets. The law can't touch me. Keanu reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. The scan. He placed it on the table. Gregory leaned in. What is that? A signal, Keanu said. Broadcasting live to an encrypted server. Everything you've said since we walked in is being recorded. The moment I leave, it uploads to every news outlet we trust. And this time, it's not just a confession. It's a declaration. Gregory's face hardened. You wouldn't. Keanu looked him in the eye. I already did. By the time they left the villa, the recording was already moving across the world. It hit every screen, every feed. No editing, no filters. Just a man admitting he believed people didn't care enough to fight corruption. Admitting he thought he could rebuild evil again, because silence always came after outrage. But this time, the world didn't stay silent. In cities across the globe, protests began. Not loud or violent, but strong, real. People posted the truth. They wrote letters, demanded new rules for charities, new oversight, new faces. And they remembered Keanu. Not as an actor. But as a man who chose to act when it counted. Back in Los Angeles, Lena stood outside a courthouse where new hearings were being scheduled. She told reporters, this isn't just about Keanu. It's about every one of us. About choosing to care. About doing what's right when no one's watching. Kim was there too. She spoke on a panel about truth in media, admitting everything she had done, without blaming anyone else, She didn't ask for sympathy. She asked for change. And the crowd applauded, not because she was perfect, but because she was honest. Keanu sat on the beach one evening, watching the tide come in. No cameras, no noise. A boy ran up to him, no older than 10, holding a small notebook. "Are you really Keanu Reeves?" he asked. Keanu smiled. "I think so." The boy sat next to him. "My mom said you helped stop some bad guys." Keanu didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I just told the truth." The boy nodded. "That's cool. I want to do that too." Keanu looked at him. "You will. And when you do, don't stop no matter what they say." The boy grinned and ran off. And Keanu watched the sun sink beneath the horizon, peace finally touching the edges of his heart. The world watches. The morning sun stretched across the skyline of Los Angeles like a promise. For the first time in weeks, the city didn't feel tense. The noise had settled. The streets didn't buzz with rumors or headlines. People moved quietly, talking in cafes, watching their phones with something rare in their eyes' attention. Because the night before, the full video of Gregory Hayes' confession had been broadcast to the world, not a clip, not an edit, the full truth. Keanu Reeves didn't speak in the video. He didn't need to. His silence beside Gregory, the way he stood and listened, the calm in his posture, it said more than any statement could. By dawn, leaders around the world were reacting. Governments called for investigations. Non-profit organizations demanded audits. Hollywood was forced to respond. And for the first time in years, the entertainment world wasn't writing its own script. The audience had taken the pen. But even in the middle of this wave, Keanu didn't celebrate. He was walking again through a quiet neighborhood near the edge of town, where few people knew him by face. His shoes were dusty, his jacket worn. He passed by a mural on a wall painted overnight by a local artist. It showed him standing beside a candle, light spilling from his chest into a crowd of shadowy people. At the bottom, in small letters, were the words, "Truth doesn't yell, it stands." He stared at the mural for a long time. Then he smiled. Later that afternoon, he met Kim in a small bookstore tucked between two buildings in Venice Beach. They didn't call ahead, they didn't plan. They just agreed if peace came, they'd meet where stories lived. Kim had changed. Not her clothes, not her makeup, but something deeper. Her voice was softer, her eyes more present. "People are still calling me a fraud," she said as they sat in the back near a dusty bookshelf. "Maybe," Keanu replied, "but not forever. The ones who matter saw what you did. I was selfish, and now you're not." She nodded slowly. "Do you think they'll forgive me?" Keanu looked around at the books, the shelves, the quiet. The world doesn't forgive quickly, but it remembers courage. Kim exhaled deeply. "I want to do something real now. No more clicks, no more headlines." "Then do it," he said. "Don't talk about it, just start." In the weeks that followed, the change grew. Dozens of influencers, actors, and public figures began reviewing their contracts with non-profits. Companies who had stayed silent now spoke up. One by one, hidden records surfaced. People started giving with awareness, not just emotion. A new movement began, quiet giving. They called it "No cameras, no photos, just real help." And at the center of it all, people kept asking about Keanu. He never returned to the red carpet. He turned down every interview. He didn't write a book. He didn't launch a foundation. He just lived. One morning, a girl named Alia, who had been orphaned in a war-torn country Keanu once visited in secret, wrote an open letter online. In it, she said, "I survived because someone believed in helping without being seen." He never spoke my name, but I know it was him. He gave me hope, not because of his fame but because of his kindness. The letter went viral. And it reminded people of something they had forgotten. You don't have to be loud to be good. You just have to be brave. Months later, Gregory Hayes was captured by Interpol in Spain. The trial lasted 6 weeks. He never showed remorse. He called the public predictable and weak. But when the jury read the verdict, guilty on all charges, he didn't smile. He looked down and said nothing. Keanu didn't attend the trial. He didn't watch it live. Instead, he was helping an old woman move into a small apartment she couldn't afford without support. She had no idea who he was, just smiled at him and said, "You remind me of my son." He helped her unpack boxes. They shared coffee. He left without saying his name. On the anniversary of the day, the first headline broke. When the world believed he and Kim were lovers, Lena published one last article. She called it "The Man Who Chose Silence." In it, she wrote, "Some heroes fight with weapons, some with words. But Keanu Reeves reminded us that sometimes the strongest act is not to react at all." He was set up, but he didn't strike back. He was mocked, but he didn't shout. He saw the truth and walked toward it quietly until the whole world turned to see where he was going. The article closed with a final line. He didn't want a crown. He wanted peace. And maybe, just maybe, that's why he earned both. Keanu sat by the ocean one last time. The waves rolled and slowly. Beside him sat Ethan, holding a fishing rod with no bait. "You gonna disappear now?" Ethan asked, watching the horizon. Keanu shrugged. "Maybe. No movies, no interviews." Keanu laughed softly. "If I say no, I'll probably do it. If I say yes, I'll probably won't." Ethan nodded. "Fair enough." They sat in silence for a long time. Then Keanu spoke. "Do you think people really changed?" Ethan looked up. "I think some did, and that's enough." Keanu picked up a small stone and tossed it into the sea. Ripples spread far across the water. He watched them go and smiled.